2 team members, but it is essential that the third team member be Naya Nordorf Hall. She is a civilian and a highly capable professional thief. You have 48 hours to recruit Miss Nordorf Hall and meet me in Seville to receive your assignment. As always, should you or any member of your IM force be caught or killed, the Secretary will disavow all knowledge of your actions. And Mr. Hunt, the next time you go on holiday, please be good enough to let us know where you're going.
This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
I'll let you know where I'm going. I won't be on holiday. You keep staring at that watch as if your life depended on it, Doctor.
Oh, yes. I suppose I'm a bit anxious.
You'll soon be with old friends.
I'm with an old friend now, Dmitri.
I'm sorry I couldn't be under happier circumstances.
I'm sorry too. You are sorry, and I'm sorry. You don't know, Gradsky thought the world of you.
Did he know before the end that you two had succeeded?
Yes, can you just...
Not have time to say.
No. After you've been infected with Chimera for 20 hours, nothing can save you. Not even very often.
You can carry them together? Safely?
Yes. And you get us to a safe place with them in Atlanta, thank God.
This is your captain again. We've experienced a slight but abrupt drop in cabin pressure. As a precaution, I've released the oxygen mask. Come on, sit back, relax. There's nothing to worry about.
Are you concerned?
Not so far. Just put on your oxygen mask. I'll see what's going on.
Okay.
Denver Center, this is Transpac 2207-747 Heavy. We're unable to maintain cabin pressurization. We've initiated a descent to 16,000.
You keep calling me Dimitri. You really shouldn't.
You're not Dmitri.
No. Wallace, hold on to this. Ulrich, remember to pull the...
Remember to pull the NO2 tank and dump it. All done.
Terrain. Terrain. Pull up. Pull up. Terrain. 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 Pull up. Pull up. Terrain. Terrain. Pull up. Pull up. Terrain.
Getting the vaccine helps protect you and those you love. When it's your
Well done, Stamp. Well done.
Stop mumbling!
Freddy's got no choice. I believe I'd break his jaw.
Stamp. I'm impressed.
Right, we don't have a lot of time, hon.
Whatever you gotta say it now. How about giving us a big smile? No?
What are you doing?
Get down on your knees. Now, this was not